Hi, it's Sloan from Made by Marley, and welcome back to our channel. It's kind of cold here in the stable today, so I'm a bit wrapped up. Today I'm going to be running through a really cool tutorial on how to use the new IOD frame molds, but I'm working on a beautiful piece of carved pine, so I'm going to be showing you how I put my paint on, how I layer my paint, what I do when I add different colours and make it chippy looking. We're going to put our frames on it. We're going to run the IOD painterly florals transfer around it. So I'm going to give you a quick sneak peek. There we go. So if you want to know how to do this, follow along now. Furniture, it's got drawers at the bottom and it's got sort of carved detail in it, and it has beautiful carved feet just on the front. I'm trying not to go too far up just now because of the big mirror. And then on top of it, it has the mirror, which has two little drawers either side. And then it has this up here, this carving at the top. And this is the surround. This whole piece comes off, so I'll be taking it off to paint it. It doesn't screw back on, it just sits on top of the piece. See what I mean about all my lighting? So there we have it. So I'm going to start by painting it all with the Emperor's silk. Coats of Emperor's silk, and it's been dried overnight. The mirror's also had 2 coats as well. It's just sitting off camera. Now for the next part, what you're going to need is some Scandinavian pink, half and half water. You can see where the paint is, you can see the water. I've still got to mix it. Cornflour, half and half as well. Rags, water bottle, some old brushes, and we're just going to start layering up some interesting texture, kind of ragging it using water, bit of a palette knife, and there probably will be a third colour added, but I'm only adding 2 of these tonight on top of the red to see where we go. Let it dry overnight, and tomorrow night we'll see where we're going, and we'll add maybe more colours, or we'll see what we're doing. So I'm going to start the video up here in this top corner. I'm going to work from the top down so that my drips and gravity all kind of works for me as against me. Now, get hold of your rags. Sometimes it's good to have a wet rag and a dry rag. I have a damp one and I have lots of dry ones. So what I'm going to start doing is, I'm going to start with, now I can already see that I think I'd like a little bit more brown colour in this as well, so I'm going to add just straight from the tin into this. You know, you can never get it right. Sometimes it's too dark, too watery, sometimes it's not watery enough in my pink. I'm looking for something a little bit more in the middle here. Go over that like that. Now let's try and see what it starts to blend in like. Yeah. This is going to mute down the really bright Emperor's silk colour that we're using, and it'll kind of give it that washed look. Now what I'm doing is, just telling you, I've got some just actual cornflour, the brown I'm just putting that on straight from the tin just to kind of darken up some areas, but using the watery paint to water that down. So I'm wanting to kind of bring out some of this here. I'm kind of wiping this bit here back. Again, some of the darker, it kind of like depends on how you're looking for your blend to be. I'm just going to turn the camera just so you can get me doing this side as well. I mean, it really does depend how you want your blend to be. Yes, I am wearing a woolly hat. I paint in a stable, it gets cold. And back in with the Scandinavian pink here around these edges, and up in here, and back with the rag. Now if I feel like there, for example, it's got too dark, I'm just gonna work my way, get that a bit lighter. This is where, this is one of those blends that you just have to keep working and working until you find it's where you want it. Not quite like this, but I realised by doing this that this side over here could do with a little bit more of the pink. So I'm just going to do this and give it a wee skish along to help it, and yeah, that's making it much more interesting. And some more here. This piece has got lots of beautiful details, so it's good to kind of wash it out of the detail. Don't want too much. That pink. I mean, I said I'd come back tomorrow and put another colour in, and I will do that. I just need to think about what's that. It might even be a spray bottle with some black, but we need to let this all dry, and I think that's some of the kind of the patience of a blended look. You have to let it dry, and it really isn't a quick process. You have to go back to it multiple times. You're not going to get everything you want in your first try. That way as well, you can always correct bits that you're not happy with, which is good. So you can see what I'm doing. I'm trying to focus some of the darker, sort of grungier looking areas to my edges and bringing some more of my pales. Now the light, I can see I'm looking in the camera here, and I can see it's very, the lights are quite bright, so it's looking quite bright, but it's actual not as bright as you think. Now I do want some drips around here, so I'm just going to hold that round the top of my handle and kind of like that. Now, yeah. So I'm just going to stop now, and then fast forward the whole front of this piece so that it's not like watching literally paint dry. So I know I said I wasn't going to add any more colours while it was still in this stage, but I realised it just needed a little bit of something else, a little bit of brightening up before it dried. So here I've got an IOD transfer stick instead of a palette knife, and all I'm doing is I've mixed a little bit of Sloan Tilton and Hornflower together to get a sort of mustardy colour. I'm adding it on with my transfer stick and then adding some water. This is just going to give it a little bit more texture, and the difference between applying it with something like this and a palette knife is completely different to a brush. It gives a completely different effect. So I'm just going to go over the whole piece now, well, the front, because I'm only demonstrating the front at the moment, but I'm just going to go over the whole front, and I'm kind of highlighting different areas that I want to bring out or lighten up. And here I am with it's just pure water in here. It's just clean water, and what I'm doing is I'm giving it some runs, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to push them back up. I do want drippy, but I don't want too drippy, so that's what I'm doing here. And I'm coming across with my damper cloth just to kind of pull bits off again. So that's that part there. Okay, so it's dried overnight, and this is what we've ended up with. Now I'm just trying to get its two colours in the light, so it's this colour here, but I want a little bit more pink through this. So what I've done is I've got an old spray bottle, and I've got some of the Scandinavian pink, and I've added a little bit of the red to it to make a sort of salmony colour, a salmon pink. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to spray it onto it, and then I'm going to add some water over the top of it to really kind of bring some more pink into it. So I'm going to put the camera on the tripod just so you can see me doing this. Now I also ignore the state of the mirror, it's all going to get cleaned, but I also did the mirror in the same way, you're seeing all my mess in my studio, as I did the bottom part. So but we'll work on this bit just now, and we'll put the pink on it, and then it's another 24 hours unfortunately till it dries again. Unless you live in a hot climate, and then you can do it as many times as you like, but here in Scotland it's probably going to take till tomorrow to dry properly. So this is it now, it's all been covered with the pink. So that's brought it, as far as I'm concerned, in my mind, more what I wanted it to be. More pink, less red. I know I base coated it in red and wanted the red to come through, but I didn't want it all overpowering. I just didn't want the red to do that to it. So now I am much happier. I mean, there's some nice red coming through there, but I'm much happier with the overall sort of how it looks now. It's still wet. As I said, we'll work again on this tomorrow, and I did the mirror obviously at the same time. Okay, so it's really windy in Scotland today, so I'm going to talk up and try and do not too much talking, just to kind of give you a general idea of where we're going. Now originally, it's all dry now for 48 hours. The pink wash that I did has really made it the colour that I was looking for, that washed out dirty pink. So I was going to have a sort of kind of oriental kind of flower that I was going to do just across here, but I've decided, because the new IOD frames mould, I hadn't used it yet, and I was quite excited to think of a way that I could use it. So what I've done off camera is I've cast 2 lots of the frames. So I've got them all here. I used amazing casting resin. It's 1 part resin to the other part, and you just mix it together. It's really simple, or you can use paper clay, whatever you want to cast your mould. So I've done this, so I've got them all here, and I also have a random bird that my supplier put in with my order this week. So what I'm going to do is, you're going to watch, I'm going to fast forward this bit, is I'm going to kind of dry fit them. I'm just going to use masking tape just to get my position and where I would like to go, and then we're going to glue them on, and we're going to let them set, and then we'll work from there. Okay? So the frames are all dry now on the piece, and now I'm going to paint them in. I've painted the rest. I'm just going to show you what I've done. I've got some Sloan French linen and a little bit of dark brown acrylic, mixed them together, and this is going to be the base for the outside of the frame. Now you need a small artist brush for this. You don't really want it to go on. Now I've checked these are glued on solid, so we're all good with that. Now these are going to be gold leafed, the outside of the frame, so I'll just be touching the tops of the frames on the high spots with the gilding adhesive. So I just want a dark colour underneath the frame, and we're going to build up the centre with the French linen without any brown acrylic in it, just to make it a little bit lighter. And then what we'll do is we'll kind of dry brush some white into the frames after that, but we need to kind of get the dark on first. Whoops. Try not to touch the piece. It won't be the end of the world if you do, but so I just need to do this top part. Now I'm sure you'll be much neater when you're not doing things like this on camera. So that's the dark. I'm just going to quickly wipe my brush, and I'm going to put the lighter and blend it out into the frame like this, and we'll build up the middle section to make it much lighter before we put our flowers and pieces and things in our frame. So that's what I've done with all my frames, and I'll just bring the camera back and you can see all the rest that I've done. So I'm going to go on and I'm going to paint the rest of these, and I'll just fast forward this bit just so you can see me doing this bit. So this is how it looks so far. I kept the detail in that little frame there. I thought it looked quite cute, and I'll just pan out. This is how it looks everywhere else. Now my sort of intention is to run the painterly florals through it, and so I think the next thing we'll do is we'll work in dry brushing out the centres of these to make them a little bit whiter, and then we need to let everything dry for a good while before before I put any of the transfers on. I'm just going to run around with some furniture lacquer in between everything where I'm going to put my transfers, just so that it's all sealed in, so I don't have any problems with my transfers. And I'll probably seal these little frames as well. But let's work on bringing the insides of these, bringing the colour up in them and making them a little bit more like little frames. So I'm just using white chalk paint while the paint underneath is still wet, just to lighten them up
and give them that painterly look, because we're going to be adding the painterly florals. So I want the sort of insides of the frames to have that sort of kind of almost hand painted feel about them. So that's all I'm doing. I'm just using a small artist brush and I'm putting a little bit on my brush, and I'm just running it into the inside.
What I've just been doing here is I've just been dry brushing some of the yellow that I used throughout, you know, when I did the blend, just to kind of make it a little bit more grungy looking. I've just kind of highlighted it just with a tiny little bit of my paintbrush and just rubbed it into the piece. So that's what where we're at right now, and now we're going to put the rose stems to join all this together. So I'm going to put the camera on the tripod so that you can see this happening. So I've given it some furniture lacquer just in between each of the frames, just to give my transfer a surface to stick onto. Now I'm going to be using the painterly roses, but the first thing I need to do is I need to find the page with all the stems on it, because this is what's going to join all this together. I'm going to cut the stems out individually and piece them all together. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that now, and what I'll do is I'll fast forward this process so it's not too arduous and dull for you. So I've been cutting out my stems, and I just want to show you something. There's a piece in the transfer that has just the little ones, the buds. I'm going to be wanting those for my frames, so I'll just be cutting them off and using just the stems.
So if you've used IOD transfers before, they're pretty simple to use. You peel the backing off and you apply the transfer, whatever image you're using, onto your piece. You use the transfer stick to push on the front of the plastic, and then you just peel it away. You'll know when it's applied to the piece, because it'll kind of go opaque and you can tell it slides around, so you know that it's been transferred. And all I'm doing here is I'm just kind of running the stems and the leaves and the flowers down through the frames, kind of winding them through, cutting them up as I go. Just kind of, you can see what I'm doing here. I'm kind of trying out where the next leaf's going to go, where it's not going to go. I'm putting some florals in our little frames, and I'm finding some of the little buds that I showed you before, and I'm putting those in the frames. This is me starting to add the bigger flowers. So I put the stems and the stalks and everything on first, and then I added the bigger flowers once I had done that, where I knew they were all going to go. So that's just what I've done here to apply the transfer. What I would probably give you is to take your time when you're doing this. Take your time, don't rush, and get your positioning correct.
So this is how it looks at this stage. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put gilding adhesive on these dark areas of the frame, and we're going to put some gold leaf on it. I'm only going to touch it with my finger over the top. I don't want the gold leaf to go in the detail, so we're just going to kind of like gold leaf the sort of just the detail on the outside, not in the inside, if you know what I mean. That was hard for me to explain there, but I think you know what I mean. So this is how it looks so far. So I've tried to bring it in quite close, and I have a tiny little bit of the gilding adhesive on a brush, and I'm just going to touch, as you can see, just the outside detail of these frames. So I'm just kind of running it across. You'd probably actually better be doing this with a sponge, unless you want to kind of leave your frames like this without the gold. But because I do make statement furniture, you have to kind of make it a statement. So that's all I'm going to put on each frame, just enough that the details are touched, hoping that maybe you can see better. Now I can't work and put any gold leaf on it until this is properly dry, and it takes about 15 minutes to go clear, and then we'll put gold on.
I just want to point out in the close-up here, you can see some of the leaves I've scraped the paint back to just the bare pine, half and half of the leaf, just to give it more interest.
So they're not all quite dry, there's still some white bits, some white showing from the gilding adhesive, but this one here is relatively dry. So I'm just going to show you what I'm about to do. I'm just getting some gold leaf, and sometimes gold leaf's really tricky to get a hold of. If you put some talcum powder on your hands, you can grab it a little bit better. So I'm just going to do this. Now gold leaf will only stick. It will only stick to where you have your adhesive. So you don't need to worry about it sticking anywhere else. Just pat it down, making sure you're pushing it down into the detail, like that. And keep all your little bits, because you're going to need all these to do other pieces of the frame. And you just pat, and any bits that want to come away, just add them to another section. There we go. Any pieces that you think have had glue on them, but there's nothing stuck to them, just, whoops, just grab. Now I only kind of touched over the top of it, so it may be that there was nothing there in the first place. But just to be sure, I'm just going to do this. Now, you brush it off with a soft brush. This brush isn't particularly soft, but what I'm doing with this kind of harder brush is getting it down and pushed down into the detail. And you just work away really quite gently. I'll obviously touch that little bit of the frame with the glue. And then just rub away like that. You can be a little bit more, push a little bit harder at this point. And you just burnish it all onto your frame, and making sure that up in there done. And that's it. That's how simple it is. So I'll try and move the camera. While I was doing this one, I got the remainder and I put it on this one. So just sticking that on here like that. Doing the same thing again. Not too hard the pushes. Just trying to get all the loose stuff off first. Because I just put it on the top and I didn't fill in the whole of the frame, all the relief is just got the gold on it. So you still have bits of the brown peeking through it, and that was what I wanted. That's why I initially did them the kind of brown that was in the layer of the paint, just to tie it all in. For some reason there's a bit of the gold sticking up there, but I've just put that in there like that, and that's that part there done. So I'll just go ahead and I'll just do the rest, and then I'll pull the camera back and you can see how it looks as in perspective to all the rest. I just want to show you the mess. So that's the gold done. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to pick out some of the greens just to kind of frame the whole scene on the front. So in my palette here, I've mixed some Chateau Grey and I've got a little bit of Amsterdam Green. They're both Annie Sloan paints. I've kept one, the darker green, and I've mixed a little bit through the Chateau Grey to get a sort of tone between the two. So I'm just using a transfer stick from IOD, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do some little here and there, not a lot, just to kind of give it a bit of a frame. And I'm alternating between the dark and the light, and I'm just going to go round picking out pieces, generally the sort of edges and corners, because you're trying to create your, a frame for what you've done. So I'll go and do that, and then the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to go and get some gold gilding paste, and we're going to bring out all the detail on the feet and everything with gold gilding paste. So this is all I'm doing with this. I'm just getting the green and I'm just picking out bits to pull it together to make it look like it's one sort of cohesive piece. So just using some gold gilding paste, all I'm doing is touching up all my relief, all where there's detail all over the piece with my finger or the sponge. I'm just doing all the edges, and the next thing, which I didn't do in camera, was the whole piece was covered in furniture wax to seal it and protect it. And here we are, here's the finished piece, all staged out, some lovely close-ups of all the details and the gold and all the detail being brought out, the framed gallery wall, and I really hope you've enjoyed watching me do this today. So I hope you've enjoyed the tutorial that I showed you today, and I really hope that you go away and you have a wee think about what you can do with your paints and your moulds and your transfers. And if you've liked this, give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel and this is the first time you've watched me, then consider subscribing and push the bell so that you're notified when Martin and I do a new video. Yes, there is somebody else with me. Martin and I are a team. We do upcycles, we do casts, we do makes, and I do furniture. So look out for us, and I'll see you again next week.